welcome to Desk of Ladyada.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Desk of Ladyada. It's me, Lady Ada, and here I am at my desk. I'm gonna get some fun stuff to show off today. Got some interesting chips. We've got some cool turntables, and of course we've got the great search right after. So, do we have any updates or news this week?
First off, I just want to say Happy Easter, Passover, Ramadan, whatever you celebrate, whatever it is. Hopefully, you're coming together and sharing some good times.
Good food.
And we're here together now. So this week, normal week of shows. I think we have JP guest host for Show and Tell. And kicking off, Desk of Ladyada is probably one of the most advanced, interesting record players that has so many forward-thinking things that you've probably never seen and heard about before. And we have one.
Okay.
So Ladyada, why don't you show off the Sony Flamingo?
Okay, why don't you go to the overhead and we'll do a tour of this thing here. So this is the...
That's a record player.
This is a record player.
Not a CD player, where some people saw it online when I posted up a photo and they said, is that a CD player?
It looks like a CD player.
We're going to play a live record, a pink record, shortly.
So you can actually kind of see there's this long slot, and the record goes into the slot and it stands up. It's called the Flamingo. It can actually be played vertical or horizontal. It has a tracking and a direct drive.
Flip it upside down and show the bottom of it, because one of the things I think people don't who've seen these don't realize is on the bottom of it there's these little legs. Some folks say, "Oh, this thing's gonna flip over." No, go to the other side. Yeah, so show that. Tilt the camera up a little bit.
Yeah, hold on.
And then.
How do I do this?
Yeah.
So this flips out.
Yeah, now it's really solid and it won't tip over.
Yeah, this is like the coolest part. It's like
it's one of the coolest parts.
Very fun. Okay, and this is power. You can battery power it. You can power it from 6 volts.
Yeah, it's portable.
DC, it's portable.
Also on the back, show the little hook. So this is meant to also be mounted on a wall. You can also make it portable.
You can also wall mount it.
It can lay horizontal
and here's
or
little
vertical.
Rubber bumpers to protect it for the wall, so you have like 2 mounting slots.
Yeah.
It can play 45s or 33s, volume, 2 headphone audio line outs.
Yeah, and it says record, which is interesting.
No, for recording to tape. I looked at the manual.
Yeah.
It doesn't, obviously you can't record to a record on this.
No, of course not. Record is, they encouraged on the hardware to tell people to record things. And then one other thing that Lady will talk about, it actually, some of these did wireless broadcasting, but there wasn't such thing as Bluetooth. So how did they do it? So we'll talk about that in a bit.
We'll do that. Okay, so you want me to show this off? And this is the front.
Yeah, so why don't you move the record out of the way, stand it up with the, put the little legs out.
Okay, hold on.
And then we're going to go to the other camera.
Okay, gonna put the legs.
Yeah, so show it how big it is compared to Ladyada. There you go. Okay. And then we've got another cam view, just so you can see it. It's like 1 frame per second. But,
okay, so hold on, let me get this out.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go to the other view since this web camera ain't so great.
Yeah, that's okay.
This is the pink record.
Okay, hold on, let me put this aside, so then I want side 2 to face out. Okay, so the record slots in.
Yeah.
Oh, and then, it sits nicely, and then there's a little...
Yeah, you can maybe move it back a little bit so it's more in camera frame. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, and then this is the...
You lock it.
Lock it. And then I'll show up here. I'm going to press play.
And we have it plugged into a Sony speaker.
Yeah. So I'm just holding it. I'm going to put it down so it's more stable.
It's okay, we can hear it. Yeah.
Okay. All right, so this is a good ambient music for us to talk about. What?
Speaker? So that gives you an idea of how big it is.
Yeah. And it's cool. It's like you can see it spinning. And it's just hanging out here.
Yeah. And
being jazzy.
Hold up the record for the camera in front of the record player. This is the Blade Runner soundtrack on vinyl. Perfect record for this particular record player. Now, when we were looking at this, there's one for parts, one that works. These are really hard to come by. Some of these allow you to transmit the audio wirelessly. So you can go ahead and stop the record now. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and
then-
inside you can. It's hard to sell, but inside you can see the little
Yeah,
thing.
and then let's take the record out. There you go.
release.
Put it in
You
there.
can take out the record.
Yeah, get him a tie.
And then you want to maybe.
Yeah, I'll be off stage prop.
You can be prop manager. All right, what do you want me to do with this now?
So you can unplug the power and the
Audio. I'm gonna
Audio.
flip out the legs.
yeah,
Okay.
and then if you put it on the overhead,
Yeah.
so right in the middle, and you can't really see it between the screen. There's a little dot behind all of it. Yeah, maybe you can see where it says it's a Sony, and I could see it on the projector. There's a little dot directly above the orange dots. And yeah, right there. And that's where some units had a FM broadcaster. And that is what we're going to start to talk about very soon.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't have a lot of details on the broadcast, but I could show the webpage because I
That's what we're doing.
Right. Okay. Just
Yeah,
making sure. I was like,
well, this one doesn't have one.
I didn't build the FM broadcaster
some
yet.
do, some don't. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go to the computer.
Okay, so this is a web page about the Sony, and it has some stuff in it. It talks about the F9. I don't know if this is the F. This is the F5. So the F9, I guess, is the other version, and that one had a little hole in the back that you could use a screwdriver to adjust the FM transmitter. So FM transmitters, I think, weren't legal, even low grade ones, until like about year 2000. That's because everyone was using iTrips. Do you remember iTrips? Like you
Yeah.
plug it into your MP3 player or your Walkman, and you would transmit it to your car stereo system. And they're saying that's kind of what made it legal, but it was basically around 102 megahertz FM, and then you would be able to listen to it on your stereo system. You know, even if you didn't have audio out, or I don't know. I mean, like I don't see why you would. I mean, it is battery powered, but I don't know if you would necessarily take it somewhere and like.
You would absolutely put this in your car.
In your car? Yeah,
so
drive around.
the interesting thing is when you think about like what happens with modern electronics now that play some type of music, usually they can use Bluetooth and transmit that audio
Yeah.
to something else. But Sony at the time, they had this really clever thing, which was FM. So if you think about what this could do, this was a record player. It could go horizontal and vertical. It could broadcast on FM. It had audio out. Could play different types of records.
Yeah.
Battery powered, hang it up on the wall.
I like the hanging up on the wall.
And-
That's kind of cool because
And
it's
they
like,
published the schematic at the time.
yeah, this is
So-
the dev. This is the dev. The service manual.
Yeah, so one of the things the official name is like PSP5 or whatever.
Yeah.
So, one of the things I'm going to do is post up some photos and video, and I'm going to say like, hey Sony, like, why don't you reissue stuff like this? Like, this is the Sony that we all miss. This is the Sony that a lot of people don't even know about. The sales of vinyl go up every year. This would be a really interesting reissue with some modern electronics, and instead of FM, or keep FM in there, put Bluetooth.
Yeah. Look, they even have the board layout.
Yeah, no memory stick though. We don't want memory stick.
Yeah. This is
yeah, the board-
manually routed.
And so, once in a while, some folks say, "Oh, open source has been around forever." Because back in the day, I used to be able to get schematics. Sure. And okay, so what happened? Why don't they have it anymore? We'll be able to always repair this thing and always keep it for, hundreds of years, literally. And so this is why we thought it was really neat to show and share. Because do you really get something like this when you buy an iPhone or
I love you-
the
they're
latest Sonos player?
Do you want to get a replacement cabinet lever? Like they don't stock these anymore, but it's just funny. Like, that you used to be able to get replacement.
Yeah.
Like that's not. Like, there's no such thing anymore. Like you can't get like
Yeah.
replacement.
Oh, it does have a
components.
needle, by the way. That's how it works.
Oh yeah, it's circuit player.
Yeah.
There's a needle inside.
Yeah.
But we're not going to open it up to show that because it's protected by dust. But yeah, you can see these the 2SC2458 transistor, all the transistors. So you can in theory replace the transistors, or the resistors are labeled.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. So
1983.
1983 was a good year, and one of the most unusual, cool, interesting, kind of did it all. Right on the cusp of when consumers of things didn't really get to do what they wanted with hardware. Like that was like the beginning of the end, or the end of the beginning, however you want to look at it. So this FM piece, though, what if we wanted to do something like this now, Lady?
We would use, we'd use a FM transmitter chip. We actually have one in the store, the Psi 4713, I think. So, if you wanted to update this, there's also off-the-shelf audio to Bluetooth audio adapters. And I think even the ESP32 has an example of one of the demos you can do with it is turn it into a Bluetooth transmitter. So, these old technologies, they can be updated, although, I kind of do like audio cables.
They work.
Okay. All right, so let me show up some other stuff.
Okay. I'm still on your computer.
Yeah. Okay, so some other things that I did is, we have this a pie hole kit that we've had in no, not this one, but I thought we had a color one. One second. Yeah, we had a kit that you could put together to make a Raspberry Pi ad blocker project, and this is a really popular project that people like to build, but you can't get Pi Zeros anymore, and even if you did, a lot of people, it's hard to get all the parts in order to make this project. So we wanted to make something similar because a lot of people like to build Pi. It's a common thing. So we made a version with an ESP32. So you can go to the overhead real fast. And JP will be doing a project to document it, but I just called it ESP hole, and it shows the IP address. You can kind of barely see the text.
Blocked 731 out so far.
Yeah, hold on. There you go. So it shows the IP address and how many domains it's blocking. The only thing is it can't it can't store like these 3 megabyte ad block collections like the Pi hole does. But I have this set up with 7,000 domains. I kind of use this. There's a ad-aware network. They have a 250K list of domain names, and I loaded it onto here. So let me go back to the computer. I basically forked this project called ESP32 Ad Blocker. This project actually works quite well, but it doesn't use the TFT screen or mass storage. And what I liked about this project is, I made it so it shows up as a disk drive, and you can see all the domain names, and you can set the configuration. So the SSID and password, and then the TFT is really nice because one of the most annoying things about making Pi holes is that every time you can't use a domain name for it. You have to use an IP address because it's your DNS, so it has to be referenced by IP. But if you don't know the IP, how do you know it? So having a TFT screen is really handy, and then I like that it says how many ads it's blocked, so it's running.
Didn't know the ESP32 could work as router while exposed to networks.
No, this connects to one network only. It's on the network, and it's acting as a local DNS, just like the Pi hole, which also it's not a router. It's just a DNS server, which, when one of the hosts that it gets queries for is, whatever, swerve.com, I guess it's an ad network, or adcolony.com, it'll just say, that site doesn't exist. And that way you just don't serve up any content from those. Also good for malware blocking, so not just ads, but like crypto miner networks, or malware sites, it'll block those as well. So you can get, it's useful for not just for ad blocking. And of course it's handy when you're on mobile, because mobile browsers don't have that kind of blocking capability built in. You can't have an extension like you can on desktop. So I use this on my tablet, when I'm, in bed and I'm reading, just keeps me from clicking on ads or malware. So that's one project. And then I'm looking at some fun chips. One thing I saw is, SparkFun has a library for this magnetometer, and we talked about magnetometers a week ago, and I actually didn't see this during my search. This is a high precision magnetometer, but I really like the look of it, so I thought I'd also make a breakout. This is the MMC 5983. It's an 18-bit magnetometer, so I think could be really useful for very precise readings. I think once in a while people really need a very high quality magnetometer for measuring earth field. So made a little stemma, because it's Stemma Sunday. It has I squared C and SPI, which is another thing I kind of like. The other one was I squared C only. And let's close that. Yes, save it. The ad blocker. This is that magnetometer. Lots in stock. So just an addendum. I think 3 weeks ago I was talking about this one, but it has about plus or minus 1 millitesla, and then it's 3-volt logic and just I squared C or SPI, but 1 kilohertz bandwidth and 18-bit resolution. So a very nice magnetometer. And this is another chip that I saw. Oh, let me close this. That I thought was kind of interesting. I saw this on a cable that was like a USB PD cable, and I thought that it was an interesting design. I'll show it later. I'm getting a sample. It's a cable that plugs into USB-C and then has a DC jack on the other end, and inside is like a little PD configuration chip that says like, "Hi USB-C, like I want you to deliver me 9 volts or 12 volts or whatever." And certain current ranges. And so, I was like, oh, what's the chip that they use? So it's the HUSB 238. And, what I like about this is the utter simplicity. You just connect to USB data and control lines. There's a VN detect. There is one pass transistor, but that's a good thing. You definitely want to have something to be able to enable and disable power. And then you can set the voltage and current desired that you wanted to request over just setting a resistor, which is like super easy. So you just you can either twist a resistor or solder one in, or there's I squared C, and I thought that was kind of interesting. So there's 2 ways to set it up for configuration, which I kind of like, because usually over, I don't know where the I squared C, I think I found the I squared C register map elsewhere. But here's the I set current and the V set. So these are the common resistors. So, you can select between 5 different resistances to set 5, 9, 12, 15, 18, or 20 volts. Which is another nice thing. I've seen other USB PD chips, but they don't have, they're like, oh, we only let you select 5, 15, or 20. They don't let you set all the different little voltages in between. So I thought it was cool that this one would give you a range of resistances. So that's the chip. So any questions about that?
Can the MMC 5983 detect magma displacements?
I don't know. I've never had to measure magmas. Okay, cool. All right, so magmas. Okay, so let's go to the Great Search. We'll talk about what chip I'm looking for this week.
Are you going to Great Search?
Yes.
Where in the world is that part I need? The Great Search with DigiKey.
The Great Search brought to you by DigiKey and Adafruit. Every single week, Lady Ada uses her power of engineering to help you find things that are hard to find because we're in a global part shortage. Lady Ada, what is the Great Search this week?
Okay, this week I'm actually working more on the featherwing that I started last week. Last week, the Great Search was on finding an RS-232 transceiver chip that would take TTL logic at 3 volts and convert it to plus or minus 6 volt logic. And so we sourced a part, the Max 3232. I think it's wonderful. It's available in a couple different packages. It's in stock. So check out last week's The Great Search if you're curious. And then this week, so as I was working on this, I was like, one of the things that we've had requests for is not just an RS-232 wing, which I'm designing, but it's also reminded me of an RS-485 wing. So RS-232 is TTL serial, but with very wide voltage range. So instead of having 0 to 3 volts, it's like plus or minus 6 volts. So it solves the problem of like how to get the signal very far by just making the voltage 4 times larger, which is like a totally valid way of doing it. For RS-485, also known sometimes as DMX, does it a little differently. Instead of just making the voltage swing higher, it does a differential signal. It's a little bit like CAN bus. So, for RS-485 is used for industrial purposes. Again, it's also used for DMX. It's like a multi-tap system. It uses TTL, but it's a little bit more going on. And I thought, let's go to the computer because I'm just doing computer stuff. I thought that I had so much room, here because ignore this Ada logger. It's not an Ada logger. I just recycled the Ada logger layout. I was going to have the the DE9 over here on the edge. I'll have to hand solder it, but that way it fits nicely. And then a terminal block over here with RX, TX, and ground. But I have a lot of space left over, and so I thought I can make this be like a combo because a lot of times if you're using RS-232, you're often also interested in RS-485 because you're just like, how can I have this long distance serial transmission? And so what's interesting is I actually hold on, I want to look up the RS-45. Yeah. So I was looking around for RS-45, and I actually saw this design from Teeny Sign, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of what I want. It has, you can select RS-45 or RS-232, and then there's, this SP232X or something here, and then there is the adapter chip here. This is a Max 461, and then you can see that it's you can have one or the other, and I thought that would be pretty handy. You'd have a switch to enable or disable either chip, maybe disconnect it completely. And also, if it can't necessarily use both at the same time, although, just because of the voltage, I don't want to necessarily mess up the voltage outputs. What I could do is, only pick and place the parts for one or the other. That could also be a design. Because it would be so similar, and again, I have that space, I might as well maybe make a design that can do either or both. So this was kind of interesting and inspiring, but what I need is to get a transceiver. Now the thing is, I've never actually used RS-45, so I'm going to have to pick up something that I can use as a, the other side. I'll have to pick up some DMX light or something. Whereas I showed you last week, the space ball has RS-232. RS-232 is kind of everywhere. That's very easy to get. RS-45, I don't have anything, but it's a common request, and so I think it's a worthwhile thing for me to add on. So RS-45, there's a Wikipedia article, and it's basically a instead of a single one for RX, one for TX, there's bidirectional differential lines that go up and down, and that's how they also have idle where they're both sitting at 0 volts. There's no, there's negative, positive, and 0. And so you could actually have the bus be shared. And then for DMX, I have to make sure that it's more than 250 kilobit per second, but it looks like it can go up to 10 megabit per second. So when I went to DigiKey, so the good news is that if you search for RS-485, there's a ton of converters and adapters, and there's also the transceivers. So to start with, one thing that was interesting actually is there is some chips that are both RS-232 and RS-485. They tended to be more expensive. So if I apply, I did look and I was like, oh, that's interesting that there's combo chips. Somebody else had the same idea of why have one when you can have two? The problem is that the chips, they look amazing. This Max 3160 is super awesome, but it's $12 a piece. And while I'm sure it's absolutely worth every penny, it would be kind of, I think I have enough room. I think let's just have 2 chips and let's do it that way. So I ended up not, I ended up not wanting a multi-protocol. I'm just going to select RS-45. And then there's isolated, well, let's first pick active only because I only care about chips that are currently available. And then there's driver, receiver, and transceiver, which I don't really know the difference, but what I do care about is how many drivers, receivers. And I don't want to have just receivers, I don't want transmitters, I want transceivers. So look at the 1, 1, and 2, 2. So it's either once, RX and TX, or 2TX, 2RX, like we showed with the last week. We had a 2.2 RS-232 transceiver. So there's isolated ones. Again, I'll show that. I did look at these real briefly, and these are cool. They're all out of stock, and they're a little bit more expensive. But I did think it was, it's something to look into if we can eventually get them in stock. They're a little bit bigger. They're 16 SOIC, and they're also completely unavailable, like most chips. But there could be some purpose for an isolated RS-485. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'll keep that in mind. So looking at just the RS-485 non-isolated transceivers, we also only want surface mount parts because I'm not going to solder through hole. For the data rate, I do have to make sure that it does 250 kilobaud or above. Looks like it goes to like almost infinite. Basically, I just don't want the ones that are guaranteed to be slow. Just wasn't that many. And there's still a lot of options, so I'm going to go for only ones that are normally in stock and in stock, like ones that are stocking and available. And that gets me down to, I think a couple hundred options. And then it looks like, a common, there's like a jelly bean part layout that's an 8 SOIC. I looked around at some other RS-485 transceiver chips, like setups and breakouts. And they don't seem to use like these 8 SOIC because it tends to be just like 1 RX and 1 TX. So while I may change my mind later, I'm going to kind of go with this standard 8 SOIC package. I'm going to select that. And the reason being that, these transceivers, like CAN transceivers, it looks like there's a lot of makers and they're all kind of the same, and it's a very generic part, which is good because it means that if it's out of stock, from one supplier, I can switch over to the other. So I kind of want to stick to this kind of standard layout. The next thing is whether I want it to be half or full duplex. And to be honest, I'm actually not sure, but I think I want full duplex because I want it to automatically transmit and receive. Although I have to look into that because again, as I'm looking into this, it's like, oh, there's all these little it's so simple, but there's all these little details. But for now, I'm just picking full duplex. And another thing is for voltage supply, while I could have a little boost converter, it would be cool if I could get it working off of 3.3 volts because that way I wouldn't have to add an additional, boost converter. And this part kind of came up first, so it has the most in stock, and the price is pretty inexpensive. It's one of the lesser expensive ones. And I'm always into anything that has over 10,000 pieces in stock is kind of like a good sign for me because it's like, oh, this is like a standard stocking part. A lot of people use it, so you have to have a lot of them in stock. So I'm going to start with the ISL 8340 490. And this part, I can open up the data sheet. It's a 3.3 volt supply, but it's 5 volt tolerant. And it can go up to 10 megabits, so it's high data rate. It was designed in 2018, so it's kind of got a more, it's more modern. There's a couple that are older, but that's a fairly modern date for something like this. And it looks like they have a couple of variations. So they have versions that are slew rate limited, that have low power shutdown, or that are, looks like basically you can either have full duplex or low power shutdown. You can't have both, which makes sense. It's like if you're full duplex, it means that you're kind of waiting for signal. You can't really go into low power mode because you're waiting and listening. Whereas on half duplex, you could tell the chip, hey, I'm not waiting for a message, so go into power down, and I'll tell you when to listen for getting at idle. So it looks like there's a couple options there for this chip, but they're all, they're all this kind of standard SOIC. This is the half duplex, and this is the full duplex version. So I don't know. Looks pretty good. I basically have to look into again whether I want to get this what's more important? Basically, having a half duplex, low power, controllable, or full duplex. It kind of does its own thing, but you don't have to switch between one or the other. I don't know which wiring setup people tend to use more, so I'll look into that, and hopefully I'll pick which subvariant. But this family looks really good, and of course I love Intersil and Renesas. They're a great chip maker, so I'm feeling pretty confident with my decision. So I'll get some samples. I'll start working this into the design, and then when I do a prototype, I'll pick up a DMX light or something, and I'll try to just get it working, or I'll just build two and I'll try to get signals transmitting back and forth.
That's a great search.
Where in the world is that part I need? The great search with DigiKey.
Okay, some questions and then comments. Could that be used to quick charge LiPos, start 5 volts and increase the voltage when you're charging? I think that's for your design that you're showing.
No, you don't want to do that. It's more for when you have a chip or a device that needs a higher voltage because of power requirements.
Okay. Bill says, Lamar moved one of those pins far left second row from the top. I'm sure she'll notice, but if I don't mention it, I'll feel bad.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a whole mess.
Okay.
It's not ready.
I noticed that the one you chose was tube, not tape and digi-reel. Can your pick and place work with the individual parts, or will you just find one with tape stock?
Oh, I forgot to mention, there is a version that has tape, but it's you have to order a full wheel. So I probably get samples in tube. Our pick and place can use tube, or you can send stuff to be tape and reeled from tubing. We do that all the time.
Okay.
At this point in the silicon shortage, you get the part in whatever package, and you'll deal with the consequences later.
All right. And as always, if folks want to support Adafruit, go to adafruit.com, pick up some electronics and more.
Pick up a TFT Featherwing, and you can build this ESP whole project. I've been using it nonstop. It's been super fun.
Okay. And that's the Desk of Ladyada this week.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
See
Tune in this week for
everybody
lots of live shows.
next week.